Total immersion. Total immersion. The only way to learn a language is by total immersion. And by total immersion, my French teacher meant that I should finally screw up the courage to live in France for a semester, or at least go to Quebec for 10 days. But the thought of not being able to fall back on the tried and true North American colloquialisms sent shivers up my spine. The thought of waking and sleeping in a place where I could barely understand the phrase sacre bleu and why it's a curse. Why is that a curse? I guess it means damn it or surprise. Sacre bleu? Yeah, not. Well, I mean, it just made me nervous. And so what I did was my 2 semesters of French, firmly ensconced in Pennsylvania, and I did a semester of German here in Spokane. And whenever we were invited in class to converse in a foreign tongue, I could always say, I don't know. Je ne sais pas. I don't know, right? So much for total immersion. I was too afraid, right, to immerse myself in a culture, right, where I would be so different. And so, with millions of linguistic chickens like me, what do we say to the strangers who've risked everything to come to America? Speak English, we say. Here in the United States, we speak English. And the irony of that, right? The irony that this is our native tongue, right? A language that is from a country from whom we declared our independence. Speak English, we say. A language that is made up of, comprised of, Saxon, Anglo, Norse, and all kinds of languages, tribal languages that came together in the Middle Ages. The irony of that. Ironically, when people say speak English, they have no idea that English is not a static thing. In fact, the new Oxford English Dictionary is expanding as we speak. New words added this year. Froyo, a new word in the dictionary. This is a bad word. Ransomware, added in the dictionary. And where would we be without this new adjective? It refers to a rancid and objectionable odor. Funky ass. Funky ass is now a part of the English language. Yes, Jim, I said it. And we are totally immersed in this language that is always changing. I dare you to work that into a conversation sometime. Funky ass. Yeah. Language signifies common experience that is not static, right? Our experience is constantly changing. Language ought to invite us deeper into interpersonal experience. And that's why it's so fascinating to read Revelation 7 and to see how it handles this word, languages. After this I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, all tribes and peoples and languages, all languages, standing before the throne. Languages, in verse 9, are preserved because of the common experience that is shared in that moment. The other night, Cheryl woke up from a dream. My wife woke up from a dream in which she spoke a language she hadn't spoken since she was 9 or 10 years old. I asked her about it, and she immediately switched into this gibberish with its own rules of articulation. Just jibisibus bibovivus yibu, she said. Apparently, the rule of this language calls for an addition of an IB before every vowel sound. And she told me that she couldn't remember to whom she spoke it to, but she did speak it. And I said, well, if you didn't speak it to anybody, it's not really a language, right? And so that sent her on a mission. She ended up calling her brother in Ottawa, Canada, and her sister in Frankfurt, Germany. Did I speak this language to you? Do you remember this? No. Finally, her cousin in Wheaton, Illinois. I vaguely remember you speaking it, but I never spoke it. And I speculated to Cheryl, maybe she had an imaginary friend. I'll let you know how our therapy's going. The point is, all languages grow out of shared experience. All languages grow out of shared experience. Do you see what I see? Do you hear what I hear? Let's talk about this. The experience of John the Seer in today's passage is an experience of a multilingual future. It's a future in which we cannot avoid total immersion with the experiences of others, of people who speak different languages and have different perspectives on the world. And if you think that sounds too good to be true, maybe you need an ever-expanding and more communal definition of what truth is. Then one of the elders addressed me, verse 13, saying, "Who are these robed in white, and where have they come from?" I said to him, "Sir, you are the one who knows." And then he said to me, "These are they who have come out of the great ordeal. They have washed their robes and made them white with the blood of the Lamb." There are a couple things here. There is a dialogue in heaven. There is a dialogue. There is a conversation. One of the elders addresses John the Seer, and instead of taking an educated, isolated guess, he defers. He says, "You're the one who knows." It's a conversation. And secondly, the multitude, which consists of many languages and many language speakers, has emerged from a great ordeal. Suffering. Now, this is what I want to say to you this morning. Considering both these insights, the practical implication for faith communities like this one, like Origin, is this. You and I must suffer the experience of others to understand. And we must suffer in order to be understood. You and I must suffer in order to understand, and we must suffer in order to be understood. Have you ever been in a conversation where you've been misunderstood? Yeah. It can be painful. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone is desperately trying to make themselves known to you, and for whatever reason, you're not able to focus in on their experience? This is, I think, where Jesus lives. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there is misunderstanding, there is a break in our relationship, and there is where Jesus lives and dies. There are no words to express my sorrow and regret for the pain I have caused. Listen to the words of this great professional communicator, someone who captivated morning audiences on the national broadcast company for over 20 years. Matt Lauer had the power, the clout, and the technology to summarize the most complex stories on the face of the earth. But listen, there are no words to express my sorrow and regret for the pain I have caused. No words. To the people I have hurt, I am truly sorry. As I'm writing this, I realize the depth of the damage and disappointment that I've left behind at home and at NBC. Some of what is being said about me is untrue and mischaracterized, but there is enough truth in these stories to make me feel embarrassed and ashamed. And here's Charlie Rose, whose bona fides in journalism circles have been unquestioned until he too faced charges of sexual harassment. It is essential that these women know that I hear them and that I deeply apologize for my inappropriate behavior. I am greatly embarrassed. I have behaved insensitively at times, and I accept responsibility for that. Though I do not believe that all these allegations are accurate, I always felt that I was pursuing shared feelings, even though I now realize I was mistaken. Misunderstanding. It's everywhere. But it's also here, where Jesus shows up and says, here's the promise. One day, before the throne, all languages understood, all peoples understood, all relationships reconciled. This week, the Gonzaga basketball team, they played not only Creighton, but do you remember the team they played before Creighton, Olivia? It was called the Incarnate Word University, right? So I remember watching the game, and I said to Cheryl, who's in San Antonio right now, I talked to her on the phone, I said, have you ever heard of this school, the Incarnate Word? She's like, no. I said, well, it's in San Antonio. And I was watching the game until I got bored because it was embarrassing. I mean, Gonzaga blew them out by this terrible score. And so then I turned on Fox News, and there was an anchor woman, and she says, she's introducing the sportscaster. You know how they have this little exchange of banter, right? And she says, Incarnate Word, what does that mean? And the sportscaster says, well, we don't have time to get into that right now. So this is what I'm thinking. We're so in a rush to get to the Huppins commercial. We're so in a rush to get to Kay Jewelers, right? That we can't say Incarnate Word. I think it means the Word in the flesh. The enfleshed Word. Who might that be? Wow, we should maybe talk and think and feel about this, you know? Nope, we got to get to the scores. Right? You've got to get the statistics. This is your opportunity to talk and to listen. This is the season. This is the season of Advent during which we wait for the coming of Christ. And it's always a little strange because how can we wait for an event that has taken place over centuries ago? I don't understand. And I'll hazard to guess that you don't understand either, right? How can we wait for something that's already occurred? But maybe what we're waiting for is understanding. Faithfulness waits for understanding. Faithfulness says, I don't get you now. I don't buy everything now. But I'm hoping to understand. I'm hoping to be known by you, Jesus, and to know you. Jesus, I think, is depicted in today's passage as both the lamb and the shepherd for this very reason. Just listen to this verse. For the lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. Very interesting. It's as if just as Jesus couldn't understand his own suffering, just as Jesus was misunderstood by the people of his day, and yet he waited. He waited. We too can wait. I've been disappointed this week with Pope Francis. I was disappointed, and then at the end of the week, I had my faith in Pope Francis renewed. He's one of my heroes. He's a rock star, I think, of Roman Catholicism and the Christian church. I was disappointed in Pope Francis because he went to visit Myanmar, which is formerly known as Burma, and his advisors, the cardinal and Aung San Suu Kyi, right, the leader of the country at the time, begged him not to use a word. The word is Rohingya. Rohingya refers to these Muslim Hindu people that have lived in Myanmar for centuries, but they're being persecuted by the Buddhist majority, right? A scholar once traced Rohingya back to an Arabic word meaning God's blessed, but today it seems like they're just strangers, right? Anyway, Pope Francis did not use the word. He used other words in his speech. He used gruppe ethnici, which means ethnic groups. He used reconcilione, which means reconciliation. But he didn't use Rohingya. And perhaps it was for good reason. But then when he crossed the border into Bangladesh, he had this to say: "Dear brothers and sisters," these are to the people that have